In today's video, I'm going to share with you what I learned on an exercise bike and what I learned from playing golf and how that applies to business. Now you might be going, why on earth do I want to listen to an accountant talk about his exercise bike routine and golf? Well, I'm going to share with you right now why that's the case. Firstly, I do an exercise bike session for about half an hour, 3-4 times a week. As I've gotten older, yes, I'm getting older, aren't we all? And if you look back at some of my earlier videos versus now, there's a lot more grays. As I've gotten older, it's a lot easier on the bones to do an exercise bike session than to go for a half an hour run. And one of the great things about using that exercise bike, I use the same exercise bike every single time. It gives me metrics in terms of my performance, and it does that in terms of like wattage. How much watts do I produce during my cycle? And I had done a routine that had changed subtly over time, but it essentially stayed the same, is that for the first minute, I worked my way up to level 12. Now, I don't know how many levels it goes up to, but level 12 is a level that if I ride for half an hour, by the end of it, I'm pretty exhausted and got a full sweat on and I've got a good workout in. I changed something in the last 6 months. So rather than for all these years starting at 0 and working my way up so that I'm at 12 by the end of the first minute and then riding for the next 29 minutes at level 12, I would get on the bike and rather than work my way up to level 12 and stay there, within the first 10 seconds, I would get up to level 14 and I would just see how long I could last at level 14. And then I would bring myself down to level 13 and I'd see how long I would last. And then I'd find myself back to level 12 and I'd go for as long as I possibly could at level 12. Now, because I'd started at 14 and 13, I had tired myself more than the old way where I worked my way up to level 12. I would push my way down a little bit and I might spend literally 10-15 seconds at say level 7, and that would give me enough. And when I would pump it back up again, I would try to go and do the same cycle again of going up to 14, for as long as I could, down to 13, and then back down to 12. Now, at some point during the workout, I would then sustain 12 because I can't keep up that momentum at 14 and 13 levels for more than 10-15 seconds, and it becomes counterproductive at that point. But do you know what I found out, and this is the core business lesson for me out of this, is that when I was tracking the wattage, what I found out is I probably did about 7 to 10% more output through this new method of spiking it up and then slowing it down, spiking it up and slowing it down than what I had on the previous one where it was a consistent level of effort. Now, what's the takeaway for my business from this? I think it's really important to understand two things. Sometimes in business, you've really got to ramp things up. You've got to go really hard for a period of time to get a project over the line or to win a client or to win some sort of outcome for you and your business that takes a higher degree of intensity than, for want of a better phrase, normal business practice. And also, when you do that, you can afford yourself the luxury of a little bit more downtime. So if you go a little bit harder on a Monday, and a little bit harder on a Tuesday, and a little bit harder on a Wednesday, you can probably afford to finish at 4 o'clock on a Friday, or you can afford to not open the laptop or do that extra bit of work on a Saturday or a Sunday because you push that bit harder. But the core outcome though, is that you got more output during that time rather than if you were just working at a consistent level the whole period of time. So my takeaway, don't be afraid to do peaks and troughs. Work really, really hard for a period of time, but also know when's the time to pause. But remember, on that exercise bike, I said I reduced the level below 12 to say 6 or 7 for 10-15 seconds. I didn't do it for 2 or 3 minutes. Like, I didn't do it for 10% of the workout. I did it for fractions of the workout just while I caught my breath. Now, what did I learn on the golf course? Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not the Tiger Woods on the golf course, but I'm not horrible either. So to give you some context, when I was at university, I got my handicap down to about 7 or 8. So that means when I play golf at that point in time, I'm gonna shoot about 7 or 8 over par for the golf course. Now, a professional golfer would probably do 7 or 8 under par for the golf course to give you a sense of how far off a pro golfer I am, just to be completely clear. But what do you notice about golf and achieving success and how this relates to business? Well, in golf, You might have heard of birdies, which means you get 1 under par. So if the target score for a hole is 4 and you get 3, that's a birdie. Now, there's only so far you can go down. You can go on a par 4, you can go score a 3. You could maybe even score a 2, but that would be like a real fluke and happens really rarely even in professional golf, let alone scoring a 1 on a par 4 when you play golf. That's bordering on impossible. But what about the downside? You could potentially take an infinite amount of shots. You could play a par 5 and take 12 shots to get it in the hole, and you've got 7 over on that hole. But if you were to make up all those shots, you would need to get 7 birdies just to equalize all the damage that you've done previously to get back to par. What's the lesson here for business? I believe that it's far easier and quicker to lose money than it is to make money. Now that might not seem surprising because you could go on a spending splurge in a personal way and you can blow all your money. But in a business, things tend to not work like that. We tend to be a lot more disciplined and a lot more rational around our decision making and our execution on that decision making. So what that tells me is when things are going well, it takes a long period of time or a longer period of time to gain back on losses that we had when things weren't doing so well. So for example, if we had a few bad months, it's very easy to lose $100,000 in 1, 2, 3 months. It's not very easy to gain that $100,000 back immediately in the next 1, 2, 3 months. So what's the takeaway for us as a business owner? I find that business owners tend to overemphasize the positive and understate the negative. They think because of the creativity and entrepreneurial nature that help them create the business, they can turn things around. The negative will turn itself around a lot quicker than in reality it does, but also the cost of the negative is far greater than what we expect. So for example, if we're not hitting our budgeted sales and our cost structure represents that we're gonna lose $100,000 a month, it generally doesn't take 1 month to turn that around or 2 months to turn around. It can quite often take 5, 6 months to turn that around. And conversely, to gain the ground on what we lose, if we lose $100,000 a month, it might not be easy for us to get $100,000 profit. We might at best get $50,000 profit. So for all those losses we had previously, it might take double the time to gain it back in comparison to the time that it took us to lose it. So what does that mean in terms of decision making? For us as a business owner, we need to be vigilant in terms of where our business is going and also what decisions we're going to make to help us get the return we need in our business. Because in my experience, it takes twice as long to gain from a loss than what it does to create that loss. Takeaways from today's video. Number 1, use that exercise bike philosophy. It's sometimes better to ramp up and go harder for a shorter period of time and have brief breaks in between. There's a high probability you'll get a better output and a better outcome as a result of that. And number 2, when things aren't going your way in business, as they will not go your way on a golf course from time to time, is cut your losses. Understand where you are at any point in time and what decisions you need to make to mitigate those losses, because the time it takes to recoup those losses is often double the time it takes to create them. Hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to seeing you in the next one.